Tonight, you don't have to solve anything. If your day has been loud, you can set it down gently, the way you might hang a coat on a quiet hook by the door. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your jaw soften. Let your forehead become smooth, as if warm water has passed over it and carried the last sharp thoughts away. Imagine a museum after closing, not the kind filled with crowds and footsteps and bright signs, just a calm building that has learned how to whisper. The doors are locked, the air is cool. Somewhere far away, a security light hums like a tiny star. Glass cases reflect a dim glow, the way a pond reflects the moon. You and I walk slowly through a hallway where the past rests without being asked to perform, and as we move, I want you to know something simple and kind. You are allowed to drift. You are allowed to listen with half a mind, with a soft mind, the way you might listen to rain while your eyes are already closing. Nothing in this story requires effort. If a detail floats by and you don't catch it, that is perfectly fine. It will keep floating like a leaf on dark water. Tonight I will carry 5 gentle curiosities from deep time, 5 pieces that on paper should not exist. Not because the world is magical in a dramatic way, but because the world is quietly strange. Sometimes the chemistry is just right, the earth is just patient enough, and time, normally so eager to break things down, decides to pause. We won't chase mysteries like hunters, we'll simply stroll beside them like friends walking near a lake at night. If you like, you can imagine each discovery answering a quiet question: who made it, what it was, when it belonged, where it slept, why it mattered, how it endured. But you don't have to hold the answers. Let them pass like subtitles on a dark screen, while you keep breathing slowly, safely, as the night grows. And before we step deeper into the first room of our museum, I want to gently place something here, like a small sign at the entrance, not demanding, just inviting. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Now, let the museum lights dim a little more. There's a certain hush that arrives when the world stops asking you for anything. In that hush, the past can feel closer, not as a textbook, not as an argument, but as a texture, as a scent, as a faint echo in the walls. We begin our journey by opening a door that leads to winter, a place where the air is clean and pale, where forests stand still beneath a sky that seems larger than usual, a place where water does not rush, but gathers quietly into dark, gentle pools. We are going to the edge of a peat bog, and if you've never seen one, picture a low, wide landscape that feels like it's holding its breath. Moss thick as velvet, water that looks almost black, not because it's dirty, but because it is deep with old plant tannins like tea steeped for centuries. The surface may quiver with the lightest wind, yet the whole place feels strangely calm, like a sleeping animal. Here, the world behaves differently. In most places, time is efficient. A fallen branch becomes soil. A leaf becomes dust. Wood returns to the earth in a quiet, ordinary way. Fungi and bacteria do their patient work and the cycle continues. But in a peat bog, the water is poor in oxygen and the chemistry tilts toward acidity. The usual hungry little organisms struggle. Decay slows. The bog becomes, without intending to, a kind of soft jar, a slow seal, a place where fragile things can be held. If your mind is still busy, let it rest on that image. A jar, a quiet jar of the earth. And now, very gently, let us step back, far back, toward the end of the last ice age. Imagine the cold still lingering in the soil. Imagine a world where the forests are changing, where the animals are changing, where the very rhythm of seasons is shifting. Rivers are finding new paths. Sea levels are thinking about rising. It is a restless time, but our story will not be restless. We will watch it from a calm distance, as if through museum glass. Somewhere in that ancient world, in a northern forest, someone stands with a tool in hand. The tool is stone, polished smooth by use. The person is human, fully human, with thoughts and fears and loves we can only guess at. And the person has chosen a tree. Not a small branch, a great trunk, a body of wood that has lived through many winters. If you want, you can feel the texture of bark under your fingertips, the cool roughness, the faint dampness of resin, the scent that rises when the surface is cut, sharp, clean, almost sweet. Why would a person 12,000 years ago choose to carve a god onto a tree trunk instead of a rock? It's such a tender question, isn't it? Because wood is alive, because wood is warm, because wood carries the memory of rings, each ring a quiet circle of time, and perhaps to a mind that lives close to forests, the tree is not merely material, it is kin, it is story. So the person begins, slowly. The first cut is not loud, it is a small, decisive scrape. A thin curl of wood lifts away, and the pale inner surface appears like a hidden moon. Then another, then another. Hours pass, days. The carving grows, lines become patterns, shapes become faces. Not one face, but several, like layers of meaning stacked one above another. A tall figure rising upward as if reaching for sky. And for a while, maybe for years, maybe for a generation, this wooden being stands in the forest. It watches seasons arrive and depart. It watches children grow taller. It watches smoke from small fires drift into evening air. It watches people come and go, bringing offerings, bringing songs, bringing silence. In our museum, we do not need to decide exactly what it was: a god, an ancestor, a gathering point, a story pole, a map of a cosmos. We only need to feel the calm fact that it existed. And then one day, it goes down, not as a tragedy, not as a battle, just as wood eventually does, leaning, loosening, returning. Perhaps someone placed it. Perhaps wind and rain did. Perhaps the earth itself invited it. The great carved trunk meets the dark water of the bog, and the bog accepts it. That is the first soft miracle of the night. Not that humans carved something, but that the earth decided to keep it. For thousands of years, the statue sleeps under peat. The world above changes again and again. New forests grow, new languages bloom and vanish. Distant people learn to plant seeds, to shape clay, to build walls, to write words. Empires rise and fall like waves, and all the while the bog does what it always does. It holds. If you are listening in bed, let this be the moment you breathe a little slower. In through the nose, as if drawing in cold forest air. Out through the mouth, as if releasing it over still black water. Good. Now, much later, long enough that the number is almost meaningless, there is a different sound above the bog, the murmur of working voices. People dig into the peat, not for stories, not for gods, but for glittering minerals, for gold. They cut through layers of time the way you might cut through cake, unaware of what the deeper layers contain. And then, at a certain depth, the tool meets something firm. Wood. Heavy, darkened. At first, it might look like nothing, just ancient lumber. But when the mud is washed away, a face appears, a mouth, eyes, lines that are far too intentional to be accident. Imagine that moment. A human hand, warm and living, lifting a carved thing made by a human hand that has been dust for 12 millennia, a bridge of touch across time. In a bright museum day, that might feel thrilling, but in our night museum it feels quiet and intimate, like finding a letter in a drawer you forgot existed. The statue will eventually be measured, studied, and dated. People will count rings in the tree. They will compare it to pyramids and stones and calendars. They will debate the meaning of patterns and the number of faces. But tonight, we don't need the argument. We only need the sensation. The earth kept a wooden thought. And if the earth can keep something so fragile, perhaps you can let it keep your worries for a while too. Let the bog hold them. Let the dark water take them without judgment. As we stand in this first gallery of the museum, the lights remain low. You can almost see your own reflection in the glass case, not as a sharp outline, but as a soft shape, a presence, someone who has made it through another day. In a moment, we will move to the next room, to a desert where pale statues once stood under warm sun, figures with dark eyes buried beneath house floors as if put to sleep on purpose. But for now, stay with the bog. Stay with the slow chemistry. Stay with the gentle truth that time is not always a straight line. Sometimes it is a loop, a ring, a quiet spiral. And as your mind begins to drift, I will leave you with one small, steady thought to carry into the next part of our journey. Some mysteries do not need to be solved to be soothing. Some questions are simply soft places to rest. Let's walk on. Not with hurried footsteps, but with the quiet pace of someone moving through a building that is almost asleep. The museum corridor narrows, then opens into a new gallery, and with it, the air changes. In the first room, everything was damp and dark, a world of peat and shadow where the water held its breath. Here, the air is warmer. You can feel it even before you see it, like stepping from a cool hallway into a sunlit atrium. The light is still low in our night museum, but the walls carry a different color. Pale sand, soft gold, the faint blush of clay. The scent in this room is not moss and cold water, but dust warmed by daylight, and the quiet mineral smell of stone that has been resting in the open for a very long time. If your body is ready to soften more, let your shoulders drop again, as if you are setting down a small, invisible bag you've carried all day. Let your breathing find a slow rhythm, in and out. Good. Now imagine we are folding a map. The northern forest and bog become a small square of paper, carefully tucked away, and a new fold opens, smoothly, revealing a different landscape. The desert of the ancient Near East. A place where the sky feels wide and close at the same time, where the sun moves like a slow clock across the day, and where wind draws gentle lines in the sand as if practicing handwriting. We are traveling toward a time when people were learning new kinds of staying, not just following herds, not just moving with seasons, but gathering in places where houses could stand long enough to remember footsteps. Villages formed, routines formed, even the shape of a day began to have familiar corners, a hearth, a shared meal, a place to store grain, a place to sleep. And in that early chapter of settled life, something tender happened. People began to build not only for the living, but also for the invisible things: memory, spirit, belonging, the quiet sense that a community is more than the sum of its bodies. In a modern world, we often think of history as stone and metal, durable things that survive by their hardness. But much of human life is soft. Much of what we love is made of materials that don't last: cloth, wood, skin, breath. Tonight's second curiosity is made of something that feels almost like a contradiction. Plaster, pale, smooth, and delicate, like dried milk or powdered moonlight pressed into shape. We step closer to a glass case where several human-sized figures stand in quiet stillness. They are not alive, and yet they carry the suggestion of life in a way that makes your mind slow down. Their bodies are simple, almost unfinished, torso, legs, a calm, upright posture. But their faces are careful. Picture the plaster at the start, pale powder mixed with water, stirred until it becomes a smooth, gentle paste. Each slow circle of the hand is almost like counting breath. A finger tests the texture, then returns to smoothing. Cheek, brow, chin. Small shapes coaxed into calm. Nothing is rushed. When the eyes are placed, they are dark and steady, not sharp like pools after sunset. And when you look at them, you don't feel judged. You feel accompanied, like a quiet friend sitting nearby while the night settles. The room grows quieter, and even your own thoughts soften, as if they've found somewhere safe to lie down. The noses are gently formed, the mouths are closed, as if keeping a secret, and the eyes are dark, deep, and still, set into pale faces like calm pools under a midnight sky. This is the village we call Ain Ghazal, near what is now Amman, Jordan. The people who lived there, long before writing, long before crowded cities, shaped these figures and then did something that feels strangely intimate. They buried them. Not in a distant graveyard, not out in the open. They placed them beneath floors, under the places where daily life unfolded, under the quiet rhythm of walking, cooking, talking, sleeping. If that image feels heavy, let it be gentle instead. Not haunted, held. As if a home can become a blanket, and beneath that blanket, something precious can rest. There is a softness to the idea. The past living under the present, not as a threat, but as a foundation. Maybe you felt something like that yourself. A memory under your day, a person's voice under your silence, a moment that shaped you, resting quietly beneath the surface while you go on living. If you like, take a slow breath and imagine your own mind as a house with warm rooms, some bright, some dim, and beneath it all, a calm foundation that doesn't need words. Now in our museum, I want to keep the details light enough to be soothing, but true enough to feel real. The figures were made from plaster, likely formed over a simple inner frame, then shaped by hands that had learned the patience of smoothing. Their creators added delicate features. They set dark material into the eyes, bitumen, a naturally occurring substance, like ancient tar, so the gaze would remain. And that gaze is the part most people remember, because it feels like being looked at across thousands of years. But tonight, we can soften it further. Instead of staring, imagine the figures as gentle keepers, sleep watchers, not sentries of fear, but guardians of quiet. As if the community wanted to place a calm presence in the very bones of the home, something to remind them in the middle of ordinary days that life is more than what is seen. Here is a thought to hold loosely without needing to prove it. Perhaps those eyes were not meant to alarm. Perhaps they were meant to soothe, to say, in a language without words, we are together, we are here, we will remember. And if you're listening tonight from a place where you feel a little alone, let the story offer you a gentle correction. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. In the museum's low light, the plaster looks almost warm, like pale stone touched by sunrise. You can imagine the figures in the village, not behind glass, but in the minds of those who made them. Figures that belong to rituals we can only guess at, rituals that might have felt as natural as breathing. Maybe they were displayed for a time. Maybe they stood in a special room. Maybe children walked past them and didn't feel fear, but familiarity, the way you might pass a family photograph and feel steady. Then at a chosen moment, the community lowered them into the earth, not thrown away, placed. And the soil became a covering, and time became a slow quilt. There is a quiet kindness in that, a sense that letting something sleep can be a form of respect. If you've ever put away a treasured object, not because you stopped loving it, but because you wanted it safe, you already understand the gesture. And perhaps that is part of why these statues feel so human. Not because they are perfect art, but because they reveal a feeling, the desire to keep what matters close, even when it can't stay in the open. Now let's soften into one small interactive question. Something to think about only if it feels comforting. If you could place one gentle watcher beneath your own floor, tonight, what would it protect? A memory you don't want to lose? A hope you don't want to say out loud yet? Or maybe, simply, the quiet right to rest? You don't have to answer. You can let the question float like dust in a beam of light. And while we're here, there is a subtle discovery tucked into this room. One that doesn't shout, but quietly widens the mind. We often imagine early people as simple because we mostly find their stone and bone, but plaster is a choice. It requires gathering, mixing, shaping, smoothing, and waiting. It requires a kind of calm attention. So when you picture those hands, picture them steady. Picture the way fingers move in small circles to make a surface even. Picture a face emerging slowly like a moon rising through thin cloud. Progress then is not a straight road, it is a tide. It comes in, it goes out, it returns again. Skills appear, disappear, and reappear, sometimes because the world changes, sometimes because communities move, sometimes because materials do not survive. And that means something gentle for you too. If your own mind feels uneven, if you have days when you feel capable and days when you feel foggy, remember the tide. Remember that returning is part of being human. You don't have to be the same every day to be real. Now the museum grows quieter again. We step away from the glass case and the watchers remain in their calm stillness, their dark eyes holding nothing aggressive, only presence. As we leave this room, I want to offer a small invitation. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. And if words feel too heavy, you can leave a simple symbol, a small lantern, a moon, a wave, anything that says softly, "I was here." The corridor ahead turns gently like a river bend. The desert fades behind us and the next gallery begins to rise upward into thin air. A mountain plateau. A place above 4,000 meters where silence feels almost physical and where faces appear in stone only when the sun slides into the right angle. We won't hurry there. We'll climb as slowly as breath. But for now, let the last image of this room settle into you. A home built on earth. A secret kept beneath the floor. A community saying, without noise, that some things deserve to sleep safely. And in that quiet moment, under the endless sky of time, something begins to feel different. We continue quietly. The corridor between galleries feels like a gentle river channeling you from one landscape to another. Your steps are slow, soft, almost imagined. The museum around us is still dim, still safe. But the air ahead grows thinner, as if the building itself has climbed a staircase of altitude. Tonight, I'm not only your storyteller, I'm also the night curator, walking with a small lantern of words, opening rooms that are usually locked, and then closing them again before the morning crowds return. Nothing here will rush you. Nothing here will demand your attention like a bright screen. This is the soft hour, the velvet hour, when even history, learns to whisper. If it helps, let your breathing become the guide. In, as if drawing in cool night air. Out, as if letting it drift across a calm lake. Good. Now picture the map unfolding again, one careful fold at a time. The warm dust of the desert becomes a memory behind us. Another fold opens, and the land rises into a high plateau in the Andes, where the sky feels closer and the silence feels wider. Up here, sound does not behave the same way. It travels, but it also disappears, as if swallowed by open space. A distant bird call becomes a thin thread. A breeze becomes a slow, steady note, like wind playing the rim of a stone bowl. Even your own heartbeat, if you listen for it, seems more noticeable, not because it is louder, but because everything else is so quiet. This is a place where the mind naturally slows. And if your thoughts have been racing earlier tonight, you can let this mountain do what mountains have always done: offer perspective without words. We arrive at a ridge where rock spreads out like a sleeping sea. The ground is pale and weathered, shaped by sun and frost and countless small changes that never needed an audience. The light here is not harsh, it is clean. It doesn't shout, it simply reveals. You can imagine the feel of altitude on the body. The way the air seems cooler against the inside of your nose, the way a breath can feel like it has more space around it. The lips dry a little faster. The skin notices sun and shade more clearly. The scent is faint, stone dust, dry grass, perhaps a whisper of lichen warmed by daylight. And in that clarity you notice something curious. At first, you might not see it. You might just see boulders, slabs, irregular shapes, nature's ordinary language. But then the sun shifts, almost imperceptibly, as it does when an afternoon becomes evening. Shadows lengthen, edges soften, one angle becomes another, and a face appears. Not a frightening face, not a dramatic mask, just the quiet suggestion of a human profile in stone, a forehead, a nose, a curve where a mouth might be, a cheekbone made from a ridge, an eye socket made from a hollow. Then, as your gaze relaxes, another face appears a few steps away, and another. Some look like elders, some look like animals, some look like nothing at all, until suddenly they look like something unmistakable, like a moment of recognition in your own mind. This is one of the gentle wonders of places like Marcahuasi in Peru, a high stone landscape where, under the right light, shapes resemble faces and figures. Whether the forms are purely the work of wind and weather, or whether human hands once helped refine them, the mountain does not insist on an answer. It simply offers the experience. And tonight, we can accept that softness. Sometimes the world gives us a question without demanding a conclusion. Sometimes it gives us a picture that changes when we change our angle. If you're comfortable, let your eyes grow heavy for a moment, even if they are open. Let them soften, because this room of our museum is not about sharp focus, it's about slow noticing. We step carefully across the plateau, as if walking through a natural cathedral. The pillars are stone, the ceiling is sky, the music is wind, low and steady. And the journey itself has a simple rhythm, one you can borrow for your own nervous system tonight. Step, pause, inhale, look, exhale, and step again. Step, pause, inhale, look, exhale, and step again. Let your body hear those words the way it might hear a lullaby. You don't have to physically move. Your mind can walk while your body stays perfectly still. In the distance, you might imagine a few small lights from a valley town trembling like fireflies. You might imagine the faint outline of a path made by people who come here slowly, pilgrims, hikers, shepherds with patient eyes. Humans have always been drawn to high places, not because the air is thin, but because the mind becomes spacious. And here, in this open quiet, we can lay down a small burden many of us carry: the need to be certain. You don't have to be certain tonight, not about history, not about tomorrow, not even about your own thoughts. You can let uncertainty be gentle, like mist on a hillside, present but not threatening, soft but not suffocating. As we pause beside a large boulder, I invite you into a quiet, playful question, the kind you can answer with a smile that no one sees. If the mountain could show you one face, just one, who would you hope it resembles? Someone you miss? Someone who once made you feel safe? Or maybe a version of yourself that is calmer, older, kinder, and unhurried. You don't need to choose. The mountain doesn't ask you to choose, it simply holds the possibility. Now let's bring in a small thread of true, soothing knowledge, just enough to make the scene feel grounded. Makawasi sits high above sea level, where air can feel thin and crisp. The temperature can swing between warm sun and cool shade. Stone expands and contracts with day and night, and over long spans of time, those tiny movements help shape cracks and edges. Wind carries grit, rain finds channels, frost presses softly into small spaces and opens them wider, one patient breath at a time. It is slow work, so slow that it feels like stillness. And yet, change is always happening, quietly, faithfully. If you've ever felt that your own life changes too slowly, or that healing should be faster, let the mountain comfort you. Slow change is still change. Gentle work is still work. A crack widened by frost is still a transformation. Here is another soft way to hold this place, using the simplest questions humans have always asked without turning them into homework. Who is here? You are in your bed, listening. And somewhere in the deep past, other humans stood on ridges like this, breathing thin air, feeling their own smallness beneath the sky. What are we seeing? Faces that appear and disappear, the way meanings appear and disappear in the mind. When is it? It is always now in your body. When also long ago in the stone. The mountain holds both at once. Where are we? High above the noise in a landscape that makes the day feel far away. Why does it matter? Because the mind needs spaciousness, and because wonder can be a kind of medicine. How does it happen? Light shifts, shadows move, attention softens, and the world becomes gentle again. We walk again, a face appears, then disappears as we pass. Another appears when we stop. The landscape teaches a simple lesson in attention. What you see depends on how you look, and that lesson, if we let it, can become a soft discovery about the mind, because your mind is like that too. When you look at your day from one angle, you might only see stress, pressure, unfinished things. But when you shift slightly, when you breathe, when you rest, you may see something else. Effort, endurance, small acts of kindness, tiny moments of beauty you didn't register at the time. The faces of your life can change with the light, and in the evening, the light is kinder. In our museum, we keep the lighting low on purpose, because low light invites gentleness. It blurs edges. It makes everything less demanding. It says, you don't have to examine, you can simply be. We reach a spot where the plateau opens to a distant horizon. Below, valleys are layered with haze. Far away, clouds drift like slow ships. The world is vast, but it feels strangely intimate, as if the night is holding it in one large palm. Here, a soft realization arrives, not like a revelation, but like a warm blanket settling. History is not only in museums and books, It is also in landscapes, in the patient surfaces that outlast us, in stones that have seen countless suns and never needed to explain themselves. And you, too, are part of that story, not as a footnote, but as a living breath inside the long, ongoing sentence of time. If that thought feels too big, you can let it shrink into something simple. You belong to the earth, and the earth knows how to hold you. Now, as we begin to leave this high gallery, we do it the way we came. Slowly, with the rhythm of breath. In, cool air over stone, out. Warm air into quiet. The corridor descends gently. The thin mountain air thickens into something damp and familiar. And in the next room, we will meet a place of rain and mist, Britain wrapped in a soft grey veil, where a different kind of mystery waits, a Roman head far from Rome, a small, misfiled object in the great archive of time. But we won't make it heavy. We'll make it gentle. For now, let the last image of the mountain stay with you. Faces waking in stone only when the light is right. And the comfort of knowing you don't need certainty to find calm. Somewhere behind you, the watchers of plaster remain. Ahead, the mist will soften everything again. And your eyelids can soften too now. We step into the next gallery the way you might step into early morning. Not the busy morning with alarms and screens, but the kind of morning that arrives before anyone speaks, when the world is wrapped in soft grey and every sound seems to travel through cotton. The mountain air fades behind us. The museum floor feels cooler again. Somewhere in the ceiling, a low lamp glows like a small, patient moon. Our footsteps are almost silent, as if the building is grateful for quiet company. If your thoughts are still moving, let the mist help you. Inhale, as if you are breathing in a damp field. Exhale, as if you are breathing out a long, slow sigh that fogs a window. Good. Now imagine we unfold another map, and this time the paper is slightly wet at the edges, curled by rain. We are traveling to Britain, an island where weather can be a gentle storyteller, where clouds do not always feel heavy but soft, and where the land often looks like it has been covered with a thin shawl. The scene opens on a narrow road of stone and earth. A hedgerow stands close, damp leaves shining with tiny beads. Grass bends under the weight of water. Somewhere, a stream runs quietly, not rushing, just moving. The sky is a pale lid, and the light is low and even, the kind of light that makes everything calm. In this place, sound is different from the mountain. Up high, silence was wide and sharp. Here, silence is thick and tender. It catches noise before it can become a disturbance. It softens the world, and that softness is why this room belongs in our museum, because some discoveries come not with a trumpet, but with a hush. Picture a field after rain. Mud holds footprints like memory. A spade bites into soil with a gentle, rhythmic effort. Not hurried, not dramatic, just a person working, turning earth the way you might turn a page. In Britain, the ground is layered with stories. Romans once walked these roads not as legends, but as ordinary people carrying ordinary things. Tools, letters, small coins, worn leather shoes. They built walls and baths and forts. They watched the same rain fall, and they learned the same truth. Weather does not care about empire. It simply keeps arriving. Tonight, our object is small enough to fit in 2 hands. A Roman head, carved, shaped, and far from the places you would expect to find it. Not a skull, not a ghost, not a horror, just a sculpted face, calm and classical, made to represent authority or beauty or a person worth remembering. Stone cheeks, a strong nose, a brow that holds a neutral expression, as if it has practiced patience for centuries, And here is the gentle puzzle. It appears in the wrong place. Not wrong in a dramatic way, wrong like a letter that arrives at the neighboring house. Wrong like a book returned to the shelf, one aisle over. A small misplacement in the great library of time. How did it get here? There are many quiet possibilities, and none of them need to be loud. Maybe it traveled as a souvenir, carried by someone who wanted to keep a piece of the wider world close. Maybe it was traded, passed hand to hand, changing meaning as it went. First a symbol, then a keepsake, then simply a curious stone face. Maybe it was repurposed, built into a wall, used as a weight, hidden in a corner, forgotten, and then found again when the earth was turned. History often feels tidy in books with straight arrows and clear labels, but real history is more like this misty field, soft edges, blurred paths, and objects that wander. If you are the kind of person who sometimes worries about your own life feeling out of place, let the Roman head comfort you. Even in the past, things moved in unexpected ways. Even in the past, the world was not perfectly filed. And maybe it is not your job to be perfectly filed either. We linger in the gallery as if we are standing by the field's edge, watching rainwater collect in shallow hollows. The museum glass reflects a faint glow, and the carved face seems almost warm in that low light, like a person resting, not performing. Now, gently, we place beside it a second kind of mystery. Not a missing treasure, not a disaster, a missing line in an old record, the 9th Legion. You may have heard the whisper of it before, a Roman legion that seems to disappear from the clearest pages of history, leaving behind a gap that people have tried to fill with stories. Tonight, we won't fill it. We will simply set the gap on a shelf and admire its quiet shape, because the gap itself can be soothing. It reminds us that the past is not a complete map. There are blank spaces, there are torn corners, there are pages that were never written down, or pages that were written and then lost to fire, water, time, and simple human forgetting. And if history is allowed to have missing pages, then your mind is allowed to have them too. If you can't remember every detail of your day, it's okay. If you don't have a perfect explanation for every feeling, it's okay. If you don't know exactly what comes next, it's okay. The museum is full of gentle unknowns, and none of them are emergencies. Let that thought settle like mist settling over a quiet field. Here the discovery is soft in the best way. The realization that uncertainty can be a place to rest, not a place to fight. Now I want to bring you closer to the sensory texture of this room, because texture is what carries you toward sleep. Picture a low stone wall slick with rain, a fern uncurling slowly at its base, a raven somewhere far off, not calling sharply, just making a low sound that dissolves into fog. Picture a boot stepping carefully, not wanting to slip, leaving a print that will fill with water and become a tiny mirror. And in the center of it all, that Roman face, still, patient, expression unchanged. If you like, you can imagine placing your hand near it, not touching, just feeling the coolness of stone through the air. The mind responds to such coolness by slowing down. The body listens and relaxes as if the world has turned down its volume. Now, a gentle interactive question, offered like a cup of warm tea. Have you ever found something ordinary, a coin, a photograph, a forgotten note, and felt a sudden closeness to a person you never met? If you have, you already understand this room. Objects are bridges. They do not need to be important to the world to be important to the heart. And if you haven't had that experience, you can still let the idea soothe you. The world is full of quiet bridges waiting patiently. In our night museum, we never chase a single answer. We let multiple possibilities coexist in peace. So the Roman head can be many things at once: art, symbol, traveler, lost item, found item, a small reminder that life drifts. And the Ninth Legion can remain what it is tonight, a blank space that invites imagination but does not demand conclusions. In that calm acceptance, something inside you can unclench, because so much of modern stress comes from the need to resolve everything immediately, every message, every plan, every problem. But the past teaches another rhythm. Some questions can wait, some questions can sleep, and you can sleep too. In this room, you might imagine an old archivist, someone with ink on their fingers, walking through a corridor of shelves. They carry a small lamp and a bundle of papers tied with string. They do not rush. They know that rushing makes the handwriting wobble. They open one folder, then close it again, the way you might open your eyes for a moment, and then let them close. Who wrote the record? Someone tired, perhaps, after a long day of duties. What did they choose to write down? Only a fraction, only what seemed useful. When did they stop when the candle burned low? Where did the rest of the story go? Into conversations, into weather, into unrecorded lives? Why is there a gap? Sometimes because no one could know what would matter later. How did the gap survive? Because absence is lighter than stone, and time often leaves light things untouched. If that sounds like your own mind, remembering some things clearly and letting other things blur, then you and history are quietly alike. So tonight, you can forgive yourself for what you didn't finish, what you didn't say, what you can't neatly explain. Let it rest in the mist, safe and unjudged, until morning arrives quietly. As we begin to leave this misty gallery, the corridor ahead is lit by a softer, warmer light. The rain sound fades into silence. The air changes again, drying slightly, as if we are approaching a sealed room, a place where earth and stone became a lock around a quiet chamber. Mexico waits for us next. A tomb that stayed closed, a drawer of memory that the world didn't open for a very long time. But we will open it gently, with reverence and without any fear. For now, let Britain remain behind you like a calm grey blanket. Let the carved Roman face remain in its case like a patient companion, and let the missing pages remain missing, without making your mind work. If this part of the story felt like a soft comfort, you can leave a gentle comment for yourself. Something simple, like, "I'm here," or "I'm resting," or even just a small moon. Don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime journeys. And as the museum corridor turns and the next door begins to appear, let your breathing guide you once more. In, like mist entering a quiet field. Out, like mist dissolving into dawn. The next door opens without a sound almost. It is not a heavy door, not a creaking one, but a door that seems to understand what we are doing tonight. Moving gently, keeping the lights low, letting the past remain calm. When we step through, the air changes again, warmer, drier, touched with the faint scent of dust that has slept a long time. If you're listening from a room with blankets and soft shadows, let your body take that dryness as a cue to sink deeper. Let the muscles around your eyes relax. Let your tongue rest easily in your mouth. Let your breath become quiet enough that you can almost forget you are breathing at all. In and out. Good. Now imagine Mexico, not the bright, crowded Mexico of daytime markets and music, but an older Mexico held in the hush of stone. Imagine hills where warm wind moves through scrub and cactus. Imagine sunlight that falls like honey, then fades into twilight. Imagine a landscape where ancient cities once rose from the forest, their stairways catching moonlight, their courtyards holding the sound of water. Tonight, our museum brings us to a tomb that stayed closed, a chamber that became a drawer of memory, a place that did not speak loudly through the centuries, but stayed silent, sealed until one careful day, long after the builders were gone, someone noticed a line in the stone that did not belong to chance. You might picture archaeologists as people in bright hats, with brushes and notebooks, and sometimes that is true. But tonight, let's picture them as something gentler, listeners, people who learn to hear the quiet language of walls, people who know that a sealed room is not an invitation to rush, but an invitation to slow down even more. The tomb we step toward belongs to the Maya world, to the city of Palenque, where temples rise like stone boats above the green sea of forest. Even if you've never been there, you can imagine the feeling. Humid air below, cool stone above, and everywhere the sound of leaves moving. An endless, soft shiver. But our room tonight is not humid. It is protected from weather. It is dry. The stone is cool beneath your hand, and the dust is fine as flour. A long stairway leads down. Step, pause, inhale, and step again. The stairway is narrow, the kind of passage that makes you want to keep your voice low out of respect. The walls feel close. The air feels still. Somewhere above, daylight exists, but down here, light is small and warm, gathered into the circle of a lamp. As we descend, you might notice something comforting. The deeper we go, the quieter it becomes. The modern world recedes, messages, traffic, headlines, none of it belongs down here. Down here, there is only stone and breath, and the slow truth that time can be patient. At the bottom, the stairway opens into a chamber, a sealed room once closed with a heavy stone. A room that held its own darkness for centuries, like a closed eyelid holding a dream. When the seal is lifted, the first thing that enters is air, new air, curious air. The second thing is light, soft light, careful light that does not want to startle what has been sleeping. And what the light reveals is not horror. It is arrangement. It is care. It is the tenderness of people who believed that a life deserved to be gathered, honored, and placed gently into the earth. In the center of the chamber, a stone sarcophagus rests like a calm boat. Its lid is heavy and carved with intricate patterns, lines that look like woven vines, symbols that feel like prayers written in stone. Around it, offerings remain, vessels, ornaments, things that once belonged to living hands. In some tellings, this moment is made dramatic, like a sudden discovery that changes everything. But tonight, we refuse drama. Tonight, we treat it the way the builders treated it, as a quiet room meant for quiet. Imagine the people who prepared this chamber. They moved with steady hands. They placed objects the way you might place a keepsake in a box. They spoke softly, perhaps they sang, perhaps they said nothing at all, letting the sound of their own breathing be enough. Then they closed the chamber, not as a loss, but as a completion. A door shut gently, a story folded and placed on a shelf. And outside, life continued. Rain fell, suns rose, generations changed. The forest grew and swallowed the stone steps in green. The city's voices faded until only wind and birds remained. Meanwhile, inside the chamber, the air stayed still. The darkness stayed steady. Time did what time usually does, except slower, quieter, more respectful. Dust settled like a blanket. The offerings did not move. The carved lid waited without impatience. This is one of the softest facts history offers. Sometimes a sealed space can protect not only objects, but a feeling, a mood, a human intention preserved in the arrangement of things. When you look at a tomb like this, you are not only seeing artifact, you are seeing the shape of love and reverence from people who lived long ago. And that is the soft twist tonight. Not a shocking secret, but a gentle widening. The past was not only hardship and survival. It was also ceremony, it was also tenderness, it was also the quiet hope that something meaningful can be carried forward, even if only as a pattern in stone. If your mind likes to ask why, you can let it ask softly here. Why build such a chamber? Why carve such careful symbols? Why place offerings knowing the door will close? There are many answers, and none of them need to be certain. Perhaps it was faith, perhaps it was respect, perhaps it was the human need to say, this life mattered. And if you are listening tonight with your own worries pressing down, let the chamber offer you a small, comforting permission. Your life matters, even when no one is watching. Your quiet efforts count, even when they leave no monument. Your softness is not weakness. It is a way of keeping the world humane. Now, let's linger for a moment with the objects. A small bowl, its surface smooth from use. A pendant that caught sunlight once, now catching lamplight. A vessel shaped to hold water or cacao or something sweet in a ritual long forgotten. If you listen closely, you might hear the silence in the room as a kind of sound, like the silence inside a library at night. It is not empty, it is full of resting, and in that resting, your own nervous system can begin to copy the pattern. Because humans are good at mirroring calm when calm is offered. Here is a gentle, interactive question meant to soothe rather than stimulate. If you could place one simple object beside you tonight, something that represents peace, what would it be? A cup of warm tea? A photograph? A small stone you once picked up by water? Or maybe nothing at all? Just the feeling of a blanket and the steady companionship of your own breath. Let the answer be whatever it wants, or let the question dissolve. As we stand at the edge of the sarcophagus, the carved lid reminds us of something else. Stories are often layered. Symbols sit on top of symbols. Meanings stack like rings inside a tree. You don't have to decode them all to feel their presence. The same is true of your own thoughts. Not every thought needs to be solved. Not every feeling needs a label. Sometimes it is enough to notice there is a thought and it can pass in and out. Now the museum lantern of our words moves closer to the lid, close enough to see the small tool marks, the patient work of hands that pressed and chipped and smoothed. It is a tactile kind of time, the kind you can almost touch with your imagination. And for a moment, the distance between then and now becomes thin. You can picture a person leaning over stone, wiping sweat from their brow, continuing their careful line. You can picture another person mixing pigment, preparing cloth, carrying a vessel down steps. You can picture the whole community moving as one body, slow and solemn, not out of fear, but out of love. This is the gift of a sealed chamber. It gives you a scene, not just a fact, a scene you can enter slowly, the way you enter sleep, but we will not stay too long. We will not disturb what has been resting. We will honor it by leaving it the way we found it, quiet, intact, respected. So we step back. We let the lamp's circle of light shrink. We let the chamber return to its calm darkness, even if only in our imagination. As we begin to climb the stairway again, the air grows a little lighter, and the world above returns in soft layers. Leaves, wind, distant daylight. Step, pause, inhale, exhale, step. And as we rise, we carry one gentle lesson from the sealed room into our own beds. Some things are safe when we let them rest. Some questions can be placed on a shelf for the night. Some memories can be held without being reopened. If this part of the story felt comforting, you can leave a gentle comment for yourself below, something small like safe or quiet or I'm letting the day close. In the next gallery, we will return to the first room in a new way, gathering all 5 curiosities into a single, soft understanding. The earth is a library, and many pages are still sleeping. We will feel what that means for our own tired minds, and we will let the meaning wash over us like slow water. For now, let the sealed chamber fade behind you like a dream that doesn't need explanation. Let your eyelids grow heavier, let your breath become softer, and let the museum lights dim once more. We return for a moment to the museum corridor. Behind us, a peat bog holds a wooden giant in its dark water. A desert village hides pale watchers beneath the floor. A high plateau lets faces appear only when the light is kind. A misty field in Britain keeps a Roman face in the wrong drawer. A sealed chamber in a Maya temple holds a life with reverence. 5 curiosities, 5 gentle reminders that the past is not only what was built to last, but also what was accidentally protected. And now, as the museum grows even quieter, we step into a room with fewer objects and more space, like a lounge where the lights are low and the chairs are soft, where you can finally exhale without being observed. If you want, take a slow breath right here. In, like air moving through tall grass at night. Out, like warm fog leaving a window. Good. This room is not about new discoveries. It is about what the discoveries do to the heart, because history, at its best, is not a list. It is a companionship. It sits beside you and says, people have felt what you feel. People have worried, hoped, waited, and tried again. People have looked at the sky with a tired mind and still found beauty. And there is a tender truth beneath all 5 of tonight's pieces, a truth that sounds scientific but feels like comfort. Most of the past did not survive, not because it was unimportant, but because it was soft. Wood returns to soil, cloth becomes dust, paint fades, voices disappear into air. Even stone breaks down, slowly, grain by grain, turning back into sand. So when we look at what remains, we are not seeing the full story. We are seeing what happened to be spared, what the earth held, what the sea buried, what a sealed room protected, what a bog preserved, what a dry wind sheltered, what a chance collapse covered. This is sometimes called a survival bias, but tonight we can give it a gentler name. The kindness of accident. The fact that time, once in a while, decides to cradle something fragile. Think of the wooden idol again. In most places it would have vanished. A few seasons of rain, a few decades of fungi, and it would be gone as completely as a dream disappears when you wake. But the bog, with its dark water and low oxygen, held it like a slow embrace. Think of the plaster watchers. Plaster is not meant to last outdoors. Rain would soften it, sun would crack it, time would powder it, and yet, because they were placed beneath floors, beneath earth, they slept in a place that did not demand their decay. Think of the mountain faces. If they are nature's work, then they are a reminder that time can sculpt without intention. If they were helped by human hands, then they are a reminder that human intention can blend into stone so quietly that certainty is not always possible. Either way, they teach a calm lesson. Meaning often appears when we slow down enough to see it. Think of the Roman head, an object that wandered, that fell out of its expected context, that became a quiet, misfiled page in the archive. It tells us the world has always been connected by small movements, trade, travel, gifts, loss, and the gentle randomness of life. And think of the sealed chamber, not only a preservation of objects, but a preservation of care. The arrangement of offerings, the patience of the carved lid, the deliberate closing of the door, a human decision to let something rest. All of it together makes a single, soft image. The earth beneath your feet is a library. Not a loud library with announcements and bright fluorescent lights, but a night library. Lamps low, aisles long, dust floating in slow beams. Each layer of soil is a shelf. Each shelf holds pages. Some pages are torn. Some pages are missing. Some pages were never written down in a way we can read. And many pages are still sleeping. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by your own thoughts, let that image help, because your mind too is a library. Some shelves are neat. Some are messy. Some books are open on the table. Some are stacked on the floor. Some are filed away without labels. And at night when you are tired, the mind sometimes tries to become a frantic librarian, running from shelf to shelf, trying to fix everything before morning. But the Museum of Deep Time suggests another way. At night, libraries close, not because the books are unimportant, but because rest is part of learning. Silence is part of keeping. Darkness is part of preservation. Picture the closing gently. A librarian walks the aisles with slow steps. They do not scold the mess. They simply straighten one book, then leave the next stack as it is, because perfection is not the goal tonight. They turn off a lamp, then another. They slide a bookmark into a chapter that is not finished, and they whisper, almost kindly, "We'll come back when the light returns." They lock the doors without fear, because the shelves have waited through many nights before. And in that imagined closing, you can learn a small skill for your own sleep. You can let your inner librarian turn off the lights one by one. You can let the unfinished thoughts go back onto their shelves. You can let the unanswered questions become soft, closed folders tied with string. They will still be there tomorrow if you need them, and if you don't need them, they can remain quietly stored, like the idol in the bog, or the offerings in the chamber, kept without being handled. Here is a gentle question you might ask yourself, only if it feels soothing. What if your mind is allowed to have blank spaces? What if it is allowed to have missing pages the way history does? You don't have to solve your life tonight. You only have to live it gently and then rest. There is another comfort hidden in these artifacts. Time is not only loss. Time is also holding. We often speak of time as something that taking youth, taking certainty, taking moments away before we can appreciate them. But time also gives perspective, it gives distance between you and yesterday's sharpest worries. It gives the chance for a wound to soften at the edges. It gives the slow, invisible work of healing. And sometimes, time gives us back what we thought was gone. A forgotten song that returns when you hear the first note. A memory that rises when you smell rain on warm pavement. A feeling of safety that returns when you wrap yourself in a familiar blanket. The past like that is not dead. It is simply quiet. It is simply sleeping. And that is the phrase I want to plant gently in you right now, like a seed that does not demand immediate growth. History is not finished. It is resting. You might feel that sentence settle in your chest the way a warm stone settles into a pocket. Small, steady, reassuring. Now, as we sit together in this reflective gallery, the museum seems even dimmer, as if it is preparing you for sleep the way a kind friend prepares tea, lowering the volume, slowing the pace, leaving space between words. If you like, let your eyelids close for a moment, or let them half close, or simply soften your gaze in. Slow and quiet, out, long and easy. Good. And now a soft discovery. One more, but this one is about you. You are also an artifact of time, not in a cold museum sense, but in a tender human sense. You carry marks of living, a laugh line, a scar, a memory, a skill learned slowly, a kindness practiced, a grief survived. These are not flaws, they are carvings like the lines on the wooden idol, evidence that you have been here. If you want, you can let the old questions of the night become simpler, like the museum's own labels, quiet and brief. Who are you tonight? A tired person who deserves rest. What do you need? Something soft, something steady, something safe. When do you need it? Now, in this one gentle hour. Where can you find it? In your bed, in your breath, in this quiet story. Why does it matter? Because rest is the foundation of tomorrow's kindness. How do you begin? By letting the day end. And if the world has felt heavy lately, if your days have been crowded, remember that your quiet existence matters. There is dignity in making it through an ordinary day. There is courage in showing up. There is beauty in simply continuing. Tonight, we are not here to prove anything. We are here to soften. So let the museum do what it does best, hold fragile things with reverence. Let it hold the wooden idol, the plaster watchers, the mountain faces, the Roman head, the sealed chamber, and let it hold you too. Somewhere another listener is also letting their day dissolve. Maybe they are in a city apartment with distant sirens softened by walls. Maybe they are in a quiet suburb where a porch light glows. Maybe they are traveling, resting in a hotel room, missing home. Tonight, all of us are small points of warmth in the same wide night, connected by a gentle thread of story. Here, no one rests alone. Let that be your permission to unclench and simply be. Even if you say nothing, you still belong here. In the next part, we will drift back toward the bog again, not to analyze it, but to feel its slow rhythm more deeply, to count rings like counting breaths, to let the idea of deep time become a lullaby rather than a concept. For now, allow one more gentle thought to settle, like dust settling in lamplight. The most beautiful things often arrive in silence, and rest is one of them. Come back with me very gently to the first room of the museum. The corridor we walk now is quieter than before, as if the building has learned your rhythm and decided to match it. The lamps are dimmer. The glass cases hold softer reflections. Even the air feels slower, like water in a deep cup that has stopped trembling. If your thoughts have been drifting in and out, that is perfect. This story is meant to be like a tide. It comes close, then pulls back. It leaves a little calm behind each time. As we step into the bog room again, the light becomes darker, lower, almost candle-like. The world of moss and peat returns, and with it, that feeling of the earth being patient enough to keep a wooden thought safe for 12,000 years. In the glass case, the tall, carved figure rises like a quiet tree made into meaning. The lines on its surface look like rivers on a map or the seams of a dream. And tonight, instead of asking what each symbol means, we will do something simpler. We will count. Not with urgency, not with math-heavy focus, but with the gentle steadiness of someone counting waves at night. Because there is a small, soothing fact hidden in this artifact. The tree that became the idol once grew year by year, laying down rings like a slow calendar. And when scientists study wood, they can sometimes read those rings the way you read chapters, each band a season, each thin line a winter, each wider space a summer. But you don't need the science to feel the tenderness. You only need to imagine a tree standing in the ancient forest long before cities and highways, long before the clock on your phone. A tree that woke each morning to cold air and birdsong, a tree that drank rain, a tree that listened to wind, a tree that grew quietly without trying to impress anyone, If you've ever felt tired of performing, tired of deadlines, tired of being on, let the tree comfort you. Growth can be silent. Growth can be slow. Growth can happen without applause. Now imagine a person in a museum lab, centuries later, looking at a slice of the wood under soft light. Their work is careful, their hands are steady, their eyes are patient. They trace the rings one by one, not rushing, because rushing would make the count wrong. And in that slow tracing, there is a rhythm you can borrow. One ring, one breath, another ring, another breath. If you like, you can let your breathing synchronize with that idea now. In, one ring, out, one ring, in, another ring, out, another ring. There is no need to reach any number. The point is not the finish line, the point is the settling, because counting, when it is gentle, gives the mind a soft job. It stops the mind from running wild through worries. It offers a small path to walk, a quiet rope to hold, and tonight the rope is made of rings, thin circles of time, stacked one inside another. As you breathe, imagine those rings forming not only in the tree but also in you. Your days, too, have rings. A ring of morning, the first light, the first sip of coffee, the first thought. A ring of afternoon, the work, the tasks, the conversations. A ring of evening, the return home, the loosening, the quiet. And now you are in the ring of night, the ring meant for rest. The tree did not carry all its seasons at once. It carried them one at a time. It let winter be winter. It let summer be summer. It did not demand that every day feel like July. So you don't have to demand that from yourself either. If today felt heavy, it can simply be one ring. It does not define the whole tree. We move closer to the idol's surface, close enough to see the marks left by ancient tools. The cuts are deliberate. Some lines are deep, some shallow, like the pressure of a hand, changing as fatigue comes and goes. You can almost feel the motion. Scrape, pause, scrape again. The wood fibers lift, then settle. It is tactile time, the kind of history you can sense in your fingertips even through glass. And in that tactile time, another gentle question rises, one that doesn't demand an answer, only offers companionship. When you touch something old, an heirloom, a worn book, a smooth stone, do you ever feel for a moment less alone? If you do, that's because the mind recognizes continuity. It recognizes that others have lived before you and they too were tired sometimes. They too sought meaning. They too looked for safety in the night. Here, no one rests alone. In the museum's low light, you might notice how the wood has changed color, darkened by years, softened by water, then dried again. It is like a voice that has traveled a long distance. The message remains, but it arrives quieter. Look closely, and you'll see the carver did not work in perfect lines. The grooves wander slightly, the way a hand naturally moves. That wandering is beautiful because it proves a person was there. We don't know the name of that person, and we don't need it. It's enough to imagine someone with time to sit beside a trunk and carve slowly. They worked by firelight when evenings were long and the forest felt closer. They carved somewhere familiar, near water, near shelter, near the steady sounds of community. They carved for reasons we can hold softly, to remember, to honor, to ask for protection, to shape a story the forest could hold. And the lines survived, not through strength, but through shelter, through darkness, stillness, and the bog's keeping. Most wooden stories did not get that chance. They dissolved back into earth without leaving a trace, like dreams dissolving at sunrise. So when we meet this one survivor, it feels like finding a single, clear sentence on a page that otherwise faded. You don't have to read it loudly, just let it rest beside you. Now, let the museum widen around us again. Let the bog room become a whole landscape in your imagination. Picture the peat water, dark tea, still as a held breath. Picture the moss, soft, springy, green-black like velvet. Picture the low sky, pale, quiet, without harsh edges. In the distance, a bird calls once, then stops as if respecting the silence. And somewhere beneath the surface, more things sleep than we will ever find. Branches, leaves, seeds, forgotten tools, perhaps even footprints pressed into mud and held for a while like a thought. This is the Earth Library again, but here you can feel it rather than think it. Pages made of peat, chapters made of layers, bookmarks made of roots, and the idol, our wooden giant, one special volume that the bog decided to keep. There is something healing about that kind of keeping. Because many of us, especially in busy modern life, feel like we are always losing something: time, attention, energy, the sweetness of quiet moments. Days vanish quickly, weeks blur. You finish one task and another appears. The mind starts to believe the world is only taking. But the bog suggests another truth. Sometimes the world keeps. Sometimes something fragile is held instead of broken. And when you realize that, you can treat yourself more gently too. You can decide that not everything must be used up. Not every ounce of your energy must be spent. Not every thought must be squeezed for productivity. Some parts of you can be preserved for joy. Some parts of you can be protected for rest. Now, I want to offer you a tiny, soft twist that feels more like a warm realization than a surprise. The idol survived because of conditions that slowed decay: low oxygen, acidity, cold, still water. In other words, it survived because the world became slower. And isn't that exactly what you're doing right now? You're making your world slower. You've lowered the lights. You've softened the sounds. You've stepped away from speed. And in that slower world, something in you can survive too. Your tenderness, your imagination, your capacity to feel, your ability to begin again tomorrow with a calmer mind. If your day has made you feel worn, remember, slowness is not falling behind. Slowness is a kind of shelter. Let's return to the breath again, the simplest shelter you always carry. In, like cool air entering a forest. Out, like warm air drifting over still water. In and out. Good. Now, another gentle, interactive question, offered like a small lantern. If you could place one worry into the bog tonight, just one, what would it be? You don't have to name it aloud. You can simply imagine it as a small stone in your hand. Feel its weight for a moment, then let it drop into dark water. No splash, just a soft disappearance. The bog holds it. You don't have to. And if another worry tries to rise, you can tell it, kindly, not tonight. Tonight is for resting. We stand for a while longer in the bog room. The idol remains tall and quiet. The peat water remains patient. The museum remains dim. And slowly, your body learns what the earth already knows. Nothing needs to happen quickly in the dark. As we prepare to leave this gallery, we do not leave with answers. We leave with a feeling of being held, a feeling of being part of something long and gentle, a feeling that time is not only a thief but sometimes a keeper. In the next part, we will let our journey soften even further. We will walk slowly through the museum as if through a dream, revisiting the other rooms, not with analysis, but with lullaby-like images, sand, mist, stone, sealed darkness, and we will let those images become a quiet staircase down into sleep. For now, breathe once more. In, one ring, out, one ring, and let the lights dim a little more. Now the museum becomes softer still. It's as if the building senses that you are nearing the edge of sleep, and it begins to speak in fewer details and more feeling, like a lullaby that doesn't explain, only carries. We won't learn anything new in this part. We will simply drift through the 5 rooms again, the way you might drift through familiar scenes in a dream, lightly, without effort, without needing to hold on to the order. If your eyes are open, let them grow heavy. If your eyes are closed, let the darkness behind your eyelids become a screen for gentle images. In and out. Good. The first room opens in your mind like a wet forest after snowfall. A bog. Dark water that looks like tea. Moss that feels like velvet beneath a careful step. The wooden figure stands tall, its carved lines like rivers, like branches, like quiet handwriting from a hand that lived so long ago you don't need to count the years. And the bog does not hurry, it holds. It holds the wooden thought the way a blanket holds warmth. As you walk past the glass case, your reflection is faint, soft edges, calm presence. The museum light is low, and in low light, nothing demands perfection. The corridor turns. The second room arrives like warm dust in a beam of sunlight. A desert village, pale plaster, dark eyes that do not stare, but keep gentle watch. Under a house floor, beneath the rhythm of footsteps, the figures sleep like guardians of memory. Not frightening, not dramatic, just quietly present, like a friend who sits nearby while you rest. In the corner of the room, you can almost hear a small sound, not voices, not music, but the soft scrape of a hand smoothing plaster, the circular motion that makes the surface even, a slow circle, a slow breath, a slow settling. The corridor turns again. The third room opens upward into thin air, clean and spacious. A high plateau where the sky is close, stone that has been shaped by wind and time, and faces only when the light is right. Not because the mountain is trying to trick you, but because meaning appears when you soften your gaze. Shadow moves, edges blur, a profile emerges, then fades, then returns from a different angle. Step. Pause. Inhale. Look. Exhale. Step. The corridor turns again. The fourth room arrives wrapped in mist. Britain after rain. Grass bending under droplets. Hedges dark and wet. A Roman face, carved stone, resting far from the place it should be. Misfiled in the archive. A small reminder that the world has always wandered. Objects drift, stories move, and the mist makes everything gentle. It blurs the sharpness of the day. It says, you don't have to know exactly how it happened to accept that it did. The corridor turns again. The fifth room descends into stillness, a stairway down into a sealed chamber. Stone steps cool beneath the mind's feet, a lamp's circle of warm light, a sarcophagus like a calm boat. Offerings arranged with care. A door closed gently long ago, not out of fear, but out of reverence, letting something rest the way you let yourself rest now. You don't have to open the lid. You don't have to interpret the symbols. You only have to feel the intention. Someone once said quietly, "This life matters." Now the museum draws those 5 rooms together like threads braided into one soft rope. Bog water, plaster sleep watchers, mountain faces, misty fields, sealed stone, 5 ways the world learned to slow down. And as these images drift through you, they become less like history and more like atmosphere, like a calm soundtrack in the background of your mind. This is how a bedtime story works best, not by keeping you awake with curiosity, but by giving your mind something gentle to float on while it lets go. If it comforts you, imagine there is a 6th room in the museum, your room, your bed, your blankets, your pillow. A soft lamp turned low, or no lamp at all. In that room, you are the artifact being preserved, not as an object, but as a living being who deserves care. Let the world treat you gently tonight. Let your own mind treat you gently tonight. Now, I want to speak to the part of you that might still be holding on to tasks, to conversations, to future worries. That part often believes it must stay awake to keep you safe. So we will offer it a soothing alternative. You do not have to solve the future to be safe tonight. You do not have to replay the past to be safe tonight. You do not have to complete every thought to be safe tonight. Your safety tonight is simple: a bed beneath you, a breath inside you, a night around you, and a story that walks beside you until you drift off. If you feel your mind start to chase something, you can gently return it to one of the images. Return it to the bog, dark, still water that holds without judgment. Return it to the plaster, smooth faces with steady eyes that do not demand. Return it to the mountain, air thin and spacious, silence wide. Return it to the mist, soft grey that blurs the edges of worry. Return it to the sealed chamber, a door closed gently, permission to rest. Choose one, or let them all swirl together in a slow dream. Now a soft, interactive question offered like a feather, so light you don't need to catch it. Which room feels most restful to you tonight? The damp, dark bog, the warm desert village, the high open plateau, the misty field, or the sealed quiet chamber? You can answer without words, just by noticing which image makes your chest loosen a little more. And if none of them do, that's okay too. You can simply rest in the sound of the story itself. Now we begin to lower the lights further. In the museum corridor, lamps dim one by one. In your body, muscles loosen one by one. Your forehead releases, your cheeks soften, your shoulders sink, your hands unclench, your legs grow heavy. If you'd like, imagine the museum curator walking behind you, quietly turning off lights and closing doors, not locking you in, but giving you privacy to rest. A door closes softly behind the bog room. A door closes softly behind the desert room. A door closes softly behind the mountain room. A door closes softly behind the mist room. A door closes softly behind the sealed chamber. All of it now safely stored, all of it now quiet, and now only one door remains open. The door to sleep. We don't force it. We simply let it be there. We approach it slowly. Step. Pause. Inhale. Exhale. Step. As you near that door, the story becomes slower, the sentences longer, the spaces between words wider, because sleep likes space. Sleep likes pauses. Sleep likes silence. So I will begin to leave more silence for you, more room to drift, more room to let go. In the next part, we will let the reflection become even softer. We will speak about the gentle right to have emptiness, the gentle right to have unfinished pages, and we will begin to close the museum completely until only your breath remains, and then even your breath becomes something you don't have to notice anymore. For now, let the dream walk through 5 quiet rooms fade like a slow dissolve on film. Let the screen behind your eyelids darken. Let the night hold you. We're almost at the quietest part of the museum now. Not the loud galleries where people stand and read and point, but the back corridors where only staff walk, where the air is steady, the floors are clean, and the lights are low enough that shadows feel friendly. This is the kind of quiet that doesn't ask anything of you. It simply exists. And if you let it, it can teach your body to stop bracing, in and out. Good. Tonight we've carried 5 gentle mysteries. We've held them like smooth stones in the palm of the mind. Not to throw, not to test, not to prove, only to feel their coolness, their weight, their calm presence. And now we can set them down, one by one. Because you don't need to carry history in your hands to be close to it. You can let it sit on its shelf, safe and still, while you rest. But before we close the museum completely, there is one last kindness I want to offer you, a kindness that sits at the heart of calming storytelling and also at the heart of being human. You are allowed to have empty pages. History has them. Your mind can have them too. Think about it. A legion disappears from the record. A wooden statue survives without explaining itself. Plaster faces stare softly from a time without writing. Stone shapes resemble people only from certain angles. A sealed chamber sits quiet for centuries, keeping its own dark. In all of these, there are gaps, places where the story is not fully told and the world does not fall apart because of those gaps. In fact, the gaps are part of what makes the story gentle. They leave room for breath. If a story were fully packed, no space, no pauses, no unanswered questions, it would feel like noise. It would feel like a crowded room. It would keep you awake. But a good bedtime story has spaciousness. It has silence. It has places where nothing needs to happen. That's what your nervous system has been craving. Not more information, more space. So tonight, we practice that space together. Imagine your mind as a book opened on your chest. Some pages are filled with words, tasks, conversations, worries, plans. But some pages are blank. Not because you failed to write them, because blankness is part of the design. Blankness is where rest lives. Blankness is where healing hides. Blankness is where tomorrow can begin fresh without being crowded by tonight. If your mind tries to argue, if it says, "But I should be thinking, I should be solving, I should be preparing," you can answer it gently, as if you're speaking to a tired child. Not right now. Tonight, we are closing the book. Tonight, the blank pages are allowed, and if the child insists, you can offer it something small and soothing. A simple task, a soft rhythm, a lullaby. You can count your breath. You can picture the bog holding a worry. You can picture mist softening the edges of a thought. You can picture the sealed chamber's door closing without fear. These are not escapes. They are gentle signals to the body it is safe. Now let's soften into a tiny bit of reflection that is human, not heavy. In modern life, many people, especially busy American listeners, carry a quiet pressure to be on all the time. The day asks for constant response, emails, decisions, schedules, messages, planning. Even the rest hours get invaded by a mind that keeps scrolling through unfinished lists. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. But the past offers a different rhythm. Not an easier rhythm. Ancient life was hard in its own ways, but a rhythm with clearer boundaries between day and night, between activity and rest. When the sun went down, work slowed, fires became small, voices softened. The dark was not something to conquer, it was something to enter. Tonight, you are entering it. You are doing something profoundly wise, even if it feels ordinary. You are letting the day end. Now, I want to speak a soft truth that many of us forget. You do not have to earn rest. Rest is not a reward. Rest is a need, a right, a natural part of being alive. The tree did not earn winter. It simply received it. The bog did not earn stillness. It simply held it. The sealed chamber did not earn silence. It was built for it. So you don't have to earn sleep either. You can simply allow it. Now let's begin the closing ritual of the museum. Not with big gestures, just small, calming motions. First, imagine putting the wooden idol back into its dark water, safe and still. Second, imagine smoothing a plaster face one last time, then covering it gently with earth. Third, imagine the mountain faces fading as the sun angle changes, returning to ordinary stone. Fourth, imagine the Roman head resting back into the misty archive, content to be misfiled. Fifth, Imagine the sealed chamber's lamp dimming, the darkness returning like a soft blanket. All 5 curiosities now asleep, all 5 now quiet. And now, we turn toward the last corridor, the corridor that leads out of the museum and back into your bed, back into your breath, back into the simplest safety. If it helps, imagine a final sign on the museum door, not a warning, a blessing. It reads, "Nothing here needs to be solved tonight. Everything can wait. Even your mind can rest." Now a gentle invitation, one you can accept or ignore. If this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. It can be one word: quiet, safe, here, or simply a small symbol, a moon, a wave, a lantern. And if you subscribe, you'll always have another soft corridor to walk down on nights when your thoughts feel too loud. But you don't have to do anything right now. Right now, you can do the simplest thing. You can rest in, slow, out, long. Now, I will begin to widen the pauses between sentences. I will begin to let silence do more of the work, because sleep is not something you chase. Sleep is something you allow to arrive, like fog, like dusk, like a museum light dimming until you can barely see the glass cases anymore. And when the lights are dim enough, you don't need to see. You only need to feel warmth, weight, stillness. In the next part, we will begin the true sleep outro, the final soft descent. We will close the museum door completely, then guide you through a slow, cinematic fading, breath like wind through stone, exhale like mist over fields, thoughts like dust settling on shelves. And then finally we will let even the story fall asleep. Now we begin the true descent, not a sudden drop, not a dramatic fall, only the gentle lowering of a curtain at the end of a quiet film, when the last scene lingers and the music becomes softer than the room itself. The museum is almost dark now. The glass cases are only faint shapes like calm rectangles floating in shadow. The corridor lights have dimmed until they are more suggestion than lamp, more warmth than brightness. Even the air feels slower, as if the building is breathing with you. If your eyes are open, you can let them close whenever they wish. If they are already closed, you can let the darkness behind them become deeper, thicker, kinder, like velvet. In and out. Good. Tonight, we are going to do something simple and safe. We're going to close the museum door. Not to lock anything away forever, but to give every artifact the respect it deserves. Quiet, stillness, and the right to sleep. And in doing that, we give you the same respect. First, we walk back to the entrance hall. The floor beneath your imagined feet is smooth and cool. The walls are pale in the dim light, like stone warmed by a long day, and now cooling into night. Somewhere, a small clock ticks, not loudly, just enough to remind you that time is moving and you don't have to push it. At the entrance, there is a long bench made of dark wood. You sit for a moment, or you simply pause the way you pause before stepping out into a quiet street. And here, in the soft hush, you can let your body learn a final lesson from history. Nothing needs to happen right now. The past can rest, the future can wait, and you can be here, in the one place you truly live, in the present breath. Inhale, slowly, as if you were drawing air through a forest after rain. Exhale, slowly, as if you were releasing that air across a still pond. Again, in and out. Now imagine that each breath is a key, turning gently in a lock. Not the harsh turn of metal, but the soft turn of a well-used key that fits perfectly. With each exhale, one more part of the museum closes for the night. Exhale, and the bog room door closes. Exhale, and the desert room door closes. Exhale, and the mountain room door closes. Exhale, and the mist room door closes, exhale, and the sealed chamber door closes. You don't have to picture the exact hinges or the exact handle. Just feel the idea of closing, like closing a book with a soft cover, like pulling a blanket up to the shoulders, like turning off the last lamp and letting the room become safe and dark. Now, as the museum quiets completely, we step outside. The night air meets you like cool water. Not cold, just fresh, clean and calm. The sky above is deep and wide, and if you look up in your mind, you might see a few stars. Or you might see clouds like slow ships. Or you might see nothing at all, only a darkness that feels soft. And here, under this open sky, we let the story loosen its grip. Not because it is ending in a sad way, but because the best bedtime stories do something kind. They gradually step away, so your own sleep can arrive without interruption. If you have been holding your breath without noticing, let it become easier now. Let the inhale be smaller. Let the exhale be longer. In, gentle, out, long. Now I will offer you a small series of images, 5 more like the softest echoes of what we have seen. You don't need to hold them. Let them drift through you the way lantern light drifts across water. A bog, dark and still, holding a wooden thought. A village floor, warm with footsteps, covering pale watchers in tender earth. A high plateau where faces appear only when light turns kind. A misty field where a Roman face rests in the wrong drawer without complaint. A sealed stone chamber where care was placed, like offerings, and then allowed to sleep. Now let those images fade one by one. Fade the bog into darkness. Fade the desert into darkness. Fade the mountain into darkness. Fade the mist into darkness. Fade the chamber into darkness. Good. Now nothing remains in your mind but the feeling those images left behind. Patience, stillness, permission. And in that permission, you can allow your thoughts to become less like sentences and more like clouds, shapes that form and dissolve without needing meaning. If a thought comes, you don't have to follow it. You can watch it the way you would watch mist move across a field. It drifts in, it drifts out, and you remain safe. If you want a simple anchor, you can return to a single sentence, repeated softly like a lullaby. The past is sleeping. The museum is sleeping, and I can sleep too. Say it in your mind if you like. Once, or twice, or not at all. It will still be true. Now I want to speak gently to your body. Your body is not a problem to solve. It is an ancient animal that knows how to rest when it is safe. Tonight, you have given it safety. A quiet room, a steady story, a slowing breath. So let the body do what it was made to do. Let your forehead smooth. And let your eyes sink back. Let your shoulders melt. Let your arms grow heavy. Let your hands loosen, fingers uncurling as if they are opening to release something small. Let your chest rise and fall without effort. Let your stomach soften. Let your legs sink deeper into the bed as if the mattress is gently holding them from below. You don't have to move. You don't have to adjust. If you need to, you can, but if you don't, you can simply rest. Now we will take 3 slow breaths together, like 3 soft steps down a staircase. Breath 1, inhale and exhale. Breath 2, inhale and exhale. Breath 3, inhale and exhale. With each exhale, imagine your mind becoming quieter, as if a radio is turning down until you can barely tell it is on. If a sound exists in your room, a fan, distant traffic, a pet shifting, let it become part of the story's background. Let it be the museum's low hum, the wind outside, the rain far away. You don't have to resist it. You can include it. Now in the dimness, there is one final door, the museum door itself. It is tall but not heavy. It closes slowly. And as it closes, you feel something simple and kind. You are done for tonight. You have made it to the end of the day. Whatever was unfinished can remain unfinished. Whatever was unresolved can remain unresolved. You have the right to pause. You have the right to sleep. The door closes. For a few moments, stay with the soundless moment after closing. It is a particular kind of quiet, like the instant after you set down a heavy bag and your hands are suddenly empty. Like the second after a candle is blown out, when the room is dark but still warm. Like the pause after a final sentence, when the meaning has already landed and there is nothing left to do. Outside the museum, the street is calm. A few lamps glow amber and steady. Their light falls in soft pools on the pavement, and the pavement shines faintly as if it remembers earlier rain. Somewhere far away, a car passes, and the sound is gentle, rounded by distance. Somewhere nearer, a tree shifts its branches, and the leaves whisper in a language older than words. You stand on the steps for a moment, not rushing home, because home is already here. Your bed, your blanket, your breath. The night is cool on your skin, but not sharp. It feels like a clean cloth laid over the forehead. And if your mind asks its old questions again, who, what, when, where, why, how, you can answer them with the simplest kindness. Who is listening? You are. What are you doing? Resting. When is it? Night. The hour made for letting go. Where are you? Safe, held by a room and a story and a quiet sky. Why rest now? Because your body has earned nothing and needs everything. How do you rest? By allowing the next exhale to be a little longer than the last. That is enough. Now imagine the curator's desk inside the museum. A lamp with a low shade, a ledger book open to tonight's page. The curator writes one small line, not an analysis, not a conclusion, only a gentle note, closed peacefully. Then the pen is placed down, the ledger is shut, the lamp is turned off. The desk becomes a dark shape in darkness, and the building returns to its own deep breathing. Dust settles, not in a sad way, but in a comforting way, like snow settling on a field, smoothing every sharp edge. The questions settle. The day settles. Your thoughts settle too, becoming lighter, softer, less urgent. If you notice yourself still holding tension somewhere, at the corners of the eyes, in the throat, in the chest, you can let it melt the way ice melts in a warm cup, quietly, without effort, just by being. And if you want one final image to carry you over the threshold into sleep, let it be this: a lantern set on a windowsill. Not bright, not calling anyone, just a small, steady glow that says softly, "You are here. You are safe. You can rest." And when you wake, the museum will still be there, waiting kindly, yet tonight it fades and you drift away slowly now. No slam. Only a soft final click, like a bookmark placed gently between pages. And now the night holds you. Silence holds you. Your breath holds you. And the story will keep walking away, softer and softer until you cannot hear it anymore. If you're still awake, you don't need to change anything. You don't need to try to sleep. You don't need to force your thoughts to stop. You don't need to make your body perfectly still. Just let the night keep doing what it does best, quietly, steadily, patiently, in and out. The museum door is closed now, but you can still feel it behind you like a warm wall at your back, not trapping you, protecting you. On the other side of that door, the wooden idol stands in its dim case. The plaster watchers rest beneath their imagined floor. The mountain faces fade back into ordinary stone. The Roman head lies peacefully in its wrong drawer. The sealed chamber sits in darkness, holding its careful arrangement without being disturbed. All of it is safe. And because it is safe, you are safe. Sometimes, when we finally lie down, the mind tries to do one last sweep through the day. It moves from room to room like a night watchman with a flashlight, checking email conversations, checking future plans, checking old worries, checking small embarrassments, checking what-ifs. If that's happening for you tonight, I want you to know that watchman is not your enemy. It's an old protective instinct doing its best. So instead of fighting it, we'll give it a softer job. We'll ask it to become a museum guard. A museum guard doesn't solve anything. A museum guard doesn't rearrange exhibits. A museum guard simply walks slowly, confirms that everything is quiet, and then sits down. So let your mind walk slowly now, not racing, not scanning, just strolling. It walks past the bog room and sees the still, dark water. It walks past the desert room and sees the pale faces, calm and steady. It walks past the mountain room and feels the thin air, the wide silence. It walks past the mist room and hears rain far away, softened by distance. It walks past the sealed chamber and feels the cool stone, the deep rest. And then the mind sits down on a bench, in low light, with a gentle sigh in and out. If a thought rises, something about tomorrow, something about money, something about family, something about an unfinished task, imagine it as a small paper tag, the kind you might see in a museum archive. It has a label, it has a number, it belongs to a shelf. You don't have to read the whole label tonight. You can simply tie it with a string and place it in a box. One thought at a time. A box for tomorrow, a box for next week, a box for later, a box for I don't know yet. And when the boxes are placed on shelves, the shelves can become quiet again. This is not avoidance. It's the rhythm of night. Day is for handling. Night is for holding. Inhale softly, as if the air is cooler near your face. Exhale slowly, as if you are fogging a mirror. Good. Now let's return to a small truth that has been underneath the whole story. What survives is not always what was meant to survive. The world keeps some things by accident, and the mind keeps some things by accident too. You might remember a strange detail from a conversation, but forget the main point. You might remember a smell from childhood more clearly than a name. You might remember the tone of someone's voice even when the exact words have faded. That isn't a flaw. That's how memory works, and it means you don't have to pressure yourself to remember everything, to understand everything, to process everything. Tonight, you can let your memory be like a bog, dark, quiet, holding what it holds, releasing what it releases. If your mind is tired of being the manager of your life, let it become the landscape instead. Let it become mist. Let it become sand. Let it become stone. Let it become still water. Let it become a sealed room. All of these are forms of rest, in and out. Now I'll give you a small cinematic scene, one last gentle scene to walk through very slowly. Imagine you're standing in front of a long shelf in a dim archive room. The shelf is made of old wood, polished by time. There are boxes on it, each one tied with a pale ribbon. Each box is a question. One box says, "What if I don't do enough?" Another box says, "What if I made the wrong choice?" Another box says, "What if something goes wrong tomorrow?" Another box says, "What if I never feel fully caught up?" You don't open them, you only touch the ribbon lightly just to feel that it's secure. Then you do something surprisingly kind. You slide each box a little deeper onto the shelf so it rests safely in shadow. You whisper, "Not tonight," and you walk away. In that dim room, no box rattles, no box falls, nothing chases you. The questions stay where they are, because questions are not emergencies, They are only thoughts, and thoughts can wait. If you've been carrying grief, let it be held gently too. Not pushed away, held. Grief is love with nowhere to go. So tonight, you don't need to fix it. You only need to let it lie down beside you, like a tired animal that finally trusts the room. If you've been carrying loneliness, let it soften too. Loneliness is the mind reaching for connection. So let this story be a small connection, one warm voice in a large night. Here, no one rests alone. In and out. If you like, we can do a soft body scan without effort, without doing it right. Just noticing the way you notice the temperature of air on your skin. Notice your forehead and let it smooth. Notice your eyelids and let them rest as if they are curtains settling into place. Notice your jaw and let it loosen. Notice your shoulders and let them fall away from your ears. Notice your hands and let the fingers uncurl one by one. Notice your chest, rising, then falling. Notice your belly, soft, unguarded. Notice your legs, heavy, calm. You don't have to brace for tomorrow. You have done enough for one day. Let the bed hold the rest. Here, no one rests alone. I'm here with you tonight. If you hear a sound in your room, an air conditioner, a fan, distant traffic, let it become part of the museum's night ambience. A far-off hallway hum, a soft roof rain, a wind moving through trees. Sound can be a blanket when you stop fighting it. And if you feel the impulse to reach for your phone, treat that impulse gently too. Imagine placing the phone in a drawer, like an artifact placed in a case. Not because it's forbidden, but because it can rest. The messages can rest. The endless scroll can rest. Tonight, you don't need to be reachable by the whole world. Tonight, you are allowed to be reachable only by sleep. Here is a small, calming way to use the 5W1H without waking your mind up. Who is here? A tired person, safe in bed. What is happening? Nothing urgent, only resting. When is it? Night, the hour designed for quiet. Where are you? In a small sanctuary of blankets and darkness. Why rest now? Because your body and mind deserve the repair. How do you do it? By letting the next exhale be longer than the inhale. Now imagine your thoughts as birds in a tree at dusk. At first they flutter, shifting branch to branch, and then one settles, then another. Soon the whole tree becomes still. The birds don't disappear, they simply tuck their heads in. Your thoughts can do the same. They don't need to be erased. They only need to become quiet, in and out. And if a final worry arrives, one stubborn little bird, you can offer it a perch. A single sentence, thank you. You can rest too. Then let it settle in the dark. Now the pace becomes even slower. Your body may begin to do small things that signal sleep. A deeper exhale, a swallow, a tiny release in the shoulders, a heaviness in the legs. Let these signals happen. You don't have to monitor them. You don't have to congratulate yourself for them. You can simply allow them the way you allow a wave to come in and go out. If your mind wants one last gentle focus, let it be a simple 3-part rhythm. Breath, wait, darkness, breath, moving quietly in and out, wait, sinking gently into the mattress, darkness, soft and complete around you, breath, wait, darkness, and if you lose the rhythm, that's fine. Losing it means you're drifting, and drifting is the doorway. Now imagine the museum from the outside again, a calm building under a deep sky, no crowds, no bright signs, only one small light in an upper window, like a lantern. That lantern is not a demand, it is not an alarm, it is simply a warm dot of presence, a reminder that somewhere inside everything is resting, and that you can rest too, in and out. I will begin to repeat a few soft phrases now, like the tide repeating its own gentle motion. You can let them wash over you without holding on to them. Everything can wait. The past is sleeping. The museum is sleeping, and you can sleep. Everything can wait. The past is sleeping. The museum is sleeping, and you can sleep. Now the phrases become quieter, as if they are moving farther away down a hallway. Everything can wait. The past is sleeping. The museum is sleeping, and you can sleep. If you are already half dreaming, you can let the words blur. If you are fully awake, you can keep listening softly. Either way, you are doing it right. In and out. In the next and final part, we will let the story taper into the pure sleep outro. Fewer images, longer pauses, a final, gentle blessing, and then the quiet ending, like a book closing on a soft page. Now we arrive at the last soft room of the night. Not a room in the museum, not a room in the world, but a room inside you made of breath and darkness, made of stillness and permission. If you are still awake, you don't need to hurry. If you are already drifting, you don't need to hold on. This ending is designed to be gentle enough that you can let it fade without noticing the moment it disappears. Somewhere outside your window, the night continues doing its quiet work. Streets settle. Lights blink in distant buildings. A tree shifts its branches. A dog turns in its sleep. Even the busiest cities have a softer heartbeat after midnight, and you are allowed to match it. In, slow. Out, long. Let the exhale be the place where the day loosens. If your mind reaches for one more thought, you can answer with a simple kindness later, not tonight. Tonight is for rest. In the museum, the artifacts are not worried about being understood. The wooden idol does not ask for interpretation. The plaster watchers do not ask for certainty. The mountain faces do not insist on one explanation. The Roman head does not complain about being in the wrong drawer. The sealed chamber does not demand that its symbols be decoded. They simply remain, quietly, patiently, and in that patience they teach you something the modern world sometimes forgets. Meaning does not have to be loud to be real, so let tonight's meaning be quiet. Let it be as small as the weight of your blanket. Let it be as simple as the warmth of your bed. Let it be as steady as the rise and fall of your chest, in and out. Now imagine, one last time, the museum from above, like a calm map in moonlight. The building is dark, the doors are closed. Inside, each room rests. The bog room holds its still water. The desert room holds its pale figures. The mountain room holds its wide silence. The mist room holds its softened edges. The sealed chamber holds its careful arrangement. Nothing moves, nothing needs to. Even time seems to slow down, just a little, as if it has learned to walk quietly so it won't wake anything. And now, gently, we let the museum become smaller in your mind, as if you are walking away from it down a quiet street. It grows distant. The windows become tiny squares of darkness. The whole building becomes a single shape beneath the sky. You don't lose it. You simply leave it where it belongs, resting in the background of the night, ready to be visited again whenever you need calm. If you'd like to keep this quiet corner of the internet warm, you can subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story for more peaceful nighttime journeys. And if you feel like leaving a small sign of your presence, you can share where you're listening from tonight, or leave a gentle comment for yourself, but only when you're ready. Right now, you don't have to do anything at all. Right now, you can let your body become heavy. Let your head sink into the pillow. Let your neck soften. Let your shoulders melt. Let your arms rest where they are. Let your hands open. Let your chest rise and fall on its own. Let your belly be soft. Let your legs sink. Let your feet be warm. In and out. If it helps, imagine your day as something you can take off. A jacket with pockets full of small stones, keys, receipts, a few sharp edges you didn't mean to carry. One by one, you empty the pockets, slowly, without looking too closely. You place the keys in a bowl. You place the receipts in a drawer. You place the sharp edges on a shelf labeled tomorrow, and the shelf is strong enough to hold them. Then you hang the jacket by the door. The simple act of hanging it is a message to your nervous system. I am done walking for now. And now, in this softer room of the night, you can practice a gentle version of the oldest questions humans ask, only as whispers, only as a way to settle. Who is here? Just you in your bed, breathing. What is happening? Nothing that requires action, only resting, only letting the body repair itself quietly, the way a garden repairs itself at night. When is it? Night. The hour designed for slowing down. The hour when even the mind is allowed to blur at the edges. Where are you? In a small sanctuary. Blankets, pillow, darkness, and a story that has already carried you far enough. Why rest now? Because you don't have to prove anything to deserve sleep. Because tomorrow will be gentler when tonight is honored. How do you begin? With one long exhale, with one soft release in the shoulders, with one thought set down like a book returned to a shelf. If a part of you still feels busy, you can give it a tiny, harmless task, something rhythmic, something quiet. You can count backward from 10, not to reach 0, but to feel the spacing. 10, like a lamp dimming. 9, like a hallway growing quiet. 8, like dust settling. 7, like mist softening a field. 6, like a door closing gently. 5, like a blanket lifting to your shoulders. 4, like a tide pulling out. 3, like a lantern turning low. 2, like a page turning slowly. 1, like a final sigh. And if you lose the count halfway, that's a good sign. Losing track is the mind loosening. If you notice the edges of your thoughts still bright, you can let them blur the way a camera blurs a background at night. Let the sharpest thought become a softer shape. Let the softer shape become a shadow. Let the shadow become part of the darkness. Nothing to fix, nothing to chase. Just the slow, natural fading that sleep knows how to do. And if you carry a tender memory tonight, something sweet, something aching, something you didn't have time to feel during the day, you can hold it like you would hold a warm cup. Not squeezing, not spilling, just warming your hands for a moment. Then you can set it down on the bedside table of the mind, where it can stay close without keeping you awake. In, slow, out, long. Listen to the quiet sounds around you, if there are any. A fan turning like a slow wheel. Distant traffic like far-off waves. The creak of a house settling into night. Let each sound be a reminder that the world can keep moving while you rest. You don't have to steer it, you only have to let it pass. If your mind wants a final image to hold, one that is simple and safe, let it be this, a soft lantern, not bright, not sharp, not calling anyone, just a small glow placed beside a sleeping book. The book is closed, a ribbon bookmark rests between pages. The lantern does not try to read the book. It simply keeps it company in the dark. That is what this story has been doing for you tonight. Keeping you company. And now it steps back so your sleep can come forward. In, slow, out, long. If a thought appears, let it drift like mist. If a feeling appears, let it settle like dust. If a memory appears, let it lie down like a tired traveler. Nothing needs to be solved. Nothing needs to be repaired tonight. The world can wait. Your inbox can wait. Your plans can wait. Your questions can wait. Even your best ideas can wait, resting softly on a shelf until morning, in and out. Now we will let the words become fewer. We will let the spaces become wider. We will let silence do what it does best. Just for a moment, imagine the bog again, not as an artifact site, but as a lullaby. Dark water, still water, water that holds and does not rush. And imagine one small worry, just one, floating on the surface like a leaf. You do not push it away, you do not grab it. You simply watch it drift to the edge where the peat accepts it gently, and it becomes quiet in, slow, out, long. Now imagine the plaster watchers not as statues, but as a feeling of being accompanied, a calm presence beneath the floorboards of your own life. Something steady beneath you, like a foundation that says you are held in and out. Now imagine the mountain faces fading into ordinary stone as the light changes. This is the mind letting go of sharp focus. This is the mind learning to blur, in and out. Now imagine the mist over Britain, softening every edge. The mist does not argue with sharp corners. It simply covers them until they stop cutting, in and out. Now imagine the sealed chamber closing again, the door resting in place, the lamp dimming, the darkness returning like a blanket. Inside, everything is safe, in, slow, out, long. And now imagine nothing at all, only darkness, only breath, only the soft weight of your body sinking deeper into rest. If you are awake, you can simply stay here. If you are drifting, you can drift further. The story will not pull you back. It will not ask you to pay attention. It will simply continue to become quieter, like footsteps fading down a hallway. Everything can wait. History is sleeping. The museum is sleeping, and you can sleep. Everything can wait. History is sleeping. The museum is sleeping, and you can sleep. Now the phrases are farther away. Everything can wait. History is sleeping. The museum is sleeping, and you can sleep. A little farther now. Everything can wait. History is sleeping, and you can sleep. Farther still. Everything can wait. Sleep. Now only a hush. A soft hush, a warm hush, and in that hush, one final thought offered like a blessing and then released. The most beautiful things always arrive in silence, and you have arrived.
Our story pauses here. Every visual and word you've experienced was assisted by AI, yet guided and perfected by sincere human emotion. We hope this harmony of history and technology has crafted a beautiful dream for you tonight. Let go and drift deep into sleep. Good night.